welcome back to the show. Today I'm going to talk about the very first hitchhiking trip to Scotland that I did back in, I think it was 2016, with my friend Jack. And the reason we did this trip was because neither of us had ever hitchhiked before. I'd never hitchhiked before, and I had the idea to go and hitchhike to the other side of the world. But that was quite a big thing to do, having never done anything before, so I had to start somewhere. So we did it over 2 days. We went from Swindon all the way up to the north of England and across the Scottish border, and completely changed our perspective on what people are like and what they're like in terms of what their views on hitchhiking and general kindness of people. And I used to think that people would only do things if you did something for them in return, but people were doing all sorts of stuff for us. One guy gave us £10 and didn't expect us to ever see us again. So I couldn't quite understand that at the time. It took me a long time to understand why he did that without expecting anything in return. So I'm going to talk about that today. And before I do, there's some updates. CIC growing ever so slightly more this week. So I met with two social prescribers in the NHS, and basically social prescriber is someone who you will see if you go to the NHS, you go to your GP and you say, I'm struggling with my mental health, or I'm struggling with isolation, or both, and they think that instead of trying you on medication, antidepressants, that kind of thing, they may deem that the best thing for you to do is actually get outside and get into nature and maybe go for a walk every week, that kind of thing. And it's really good that the NHS is working like this now, because for me that was the best thing to do. It was the best thing to just go outside and start leading walks. So we met with two social prescribers at the same time, and they absolutely loved the CIC. And the few questions they had were how can I refer people? So now we get people coming in on the walks who have been sent there by their doctor, basically, which is amazing. And just ask me about the general project things I may have already mentioned on the podcast, but how we basically take people who feel isolated, like they're struggling with mental health, and they may find it really hard to face challenges, and they might have really low self-esteem, so they come along on the local walks and build that community with people on the walks. And it's all local to this county, Gloucestershire. So they go away, they may have made friends, and they come along to a few more walks, and then once a month we do a big hike to somewhere with mountains, so they can actually work up to that challenge. And they absolutely love that idea, which is amazing for us because it just shows us we're doing something right. And they basically said just make more walking groups, do a men's walking group, do one for people with accessibility problems, which I'm not really sure how that would work, but we're going to see if we can make it work. So that's absolutely amazing. And Emma's pregnancy is coming to an end almost any day now. She is now 37 weeks pregnant, which is quite, not sure how I feel about that. Quite excited, quite nervous, I suppose. No, very excited, very nervous at the same time. So this will be the final in situ episode, I'd say. This, not in situ, the final episode where I record it every week. The next 4 or so are going to be ones that are pre-recorded. So if you're wondering why I'm wearing exactly the same clothes that I am today for the next month, that's why. It is just one day that I'm recording all these episodes on. So pretty sure she's going to be giving birth soon. And I've been thinking a lot about this, really. So if you have ever become a parent, especially if you've become a dad, I think that you worry quite a lot that you're not going to get to do the sort of stuff that you like to do now. It might be going on nights out, it might be going out camping, it might be doing whatever, whoever you are, you've got things you like to do in your free time. And the big worry for a lot of people is when you have a kid, that's going to stop. And it is a big worry of mine. But I've been talking to Emma about this, and I actually think it's going to go the other way. I'm going to do more of it. So I only do outdoor stuff now with the CIC, really. I don't really go camping that much on my own, just wild camping now, which I'm really sad about, but I just don't seem to have the motivation for it. I thought I always would, but it's almost like there's not much point to it. It's like you go out and go for a little camp and then come home in the morning, and it's a bit of effort. You know, you got to pack your bag and everything. But with a kid around, the motivation is to do it for them, to show them what their dad's like, what their dad loves doing. So that's really cool. It's going to be really, really nice to just be able to do that with a kid again. Obviously, they need to be a bit older than a newborn baby, but well, maybe not. You know, we're thinking of taking them as soon as they're ready, really, just to this little patch of woodland that we use for a little wild camp. So that's very exciting. And there's a month off of paternity leave, which is great, which is why I'm pre-recording all the episodes, so I don't have to leave that baby bubble. So I'm sure after that month there'll be many, many updates about how wrong I was about being a dad, and how this or that, and the reality of it is very different, that kind of thing. But yeah, I do miss it. I do miss wild camping and adventuring. I really do. Sometimes I'll look out, I'll walk outside and it'll be raining, and I'll think, oh, those days when I had a backpack strapped to my back, and I'd be about to put the tent up, or I'd just packed away, and I'd be hungry, and maybe I'd only have a little bit of water left, but I'd be walking, I'd be making progress, I'd be in a new place, I'd never have seen what's ahead of me before, and tomorrow would be different, and yesterday was new, and yeah, it's quite a lifestyle to miss, really, adventuring, but it's not forever. It can't be forever. And at one point I did want it to be forever, but then I got to about age 27 after the big hitchhiking trip, and I just thought, now's the time to stop and go home and start a life, I suppose, because I'd met people on the road who had never stopped. They were normally men in their 50s, but there was the occasional woman in her 50s who had never stopped adventuring and never quite settled, and never quite used that potential in them to become a part of society and their cultural history, and never really make a mark, never really do anything apart from just wander around. And honestly, it was the saddest thing I'd ever seen. Someone who had just gotten too old and never done anything. And obviously they'd seen loads of things and they'd made loads of stories, but they never made anything permanent. There was just this look in their eyes, like just a really deep sadness, a really deep sort of, it's really hard to describe, but they just looked lost as well. Very sad, very lost. There was a lot of grief of what they'd never done. They'd never had a family, they'd never been married, never had a kid. And I know that life's not for everyone, but it basically is. I mean, if you're the one exception, you know, you're a creative genius like Tesla or Da Vinci, you know, it's not for you, but it probably is for you, in all honesty. And if you've never done that, then, well, you will feel like you've missed out. So I remember seeing those people, and I just thought, I can't let that be me. And there was a point around age 27 where I wasn't stopping because I didn't want to become that. I was stopping because there was something in me that had changed, and it was that I was no longer that risk-taking young man who would go off hitchhiking and all of that stuff. It was now, I'd had enough of it. I'd done more than enough for a lifetime, to be honest. And I thought, I did think as well, like, when is it going to stop? When is it enough? And it was already enough. So the first one, Scotland, that we went on, needed to do that to just dip my toe in, really, see what it was like, see if it was a thing that could be done, hitchhiking to the other side of the world. So managed to convince my friend Jack to come along. And really, I just wanted Jack there because I didn't know what was going to happen. I didn't know what it was going to be like. And he was the only one who agreed. So that makes him a bit crazy as well, which is good for me. So we planned it. We came up with a route on the months before, and we worried and worried about we'd never get picked up, and we decided what would we do if we didn't get picked up. So we had a nice little route planned, just a little walk in the Cotswolds if we didn't get picked up. So he stayed at my mum's house. I was living at home at that point. I'd just graduated from uni, so I was in the post-uni blues, really low, back at home after being away for 3 years and all that sort of thing, you know, really not in a good place. I mean, I was at mum's house, I wasn't on the street, it wasn't a bad place, you know. So anyway, we slept there, and then the next morning woke up about 6. I think we woke up really early because it was winter. It was November 2015. November 2015, walked out of my mum's house down to the big A road, which was about half an hour walk. The big A road that would connect to the big motorway, which would connect us to Scotland. So we stood there on the long slip road going on the A road, and I said to Jack, "Oh, put your thumb out," because I was scared. I didn't want to do it. So it was Jack that put his thumb out first, and Jack that caught my first ever lift. Never said that before, but it was. I was just there writing the sign for the motorway, just writing M5 on the big cardboard sign. And we didn't actually get to finish the sign because we got picked up very quickly. And it was a sort of a ginger man, I think I remember. He was just sort of new to the area, wanted to make some friends, so he thought, oh, I'll pick them up. So he only took us to the first petrol station. It was about 15 minutes away. And then next person to pick us up had blood all over his hands. And he had this weird look in his eye, and I thought, well, this is it. This is obviously when we get murdered. Everyone was right about hitchhiking. And we got in the car anyway. I don't really know why. I think I just didn't want to be rude. So got in the car, and it turned out that he'd just finished working at an abattoir, which was, it explained it. But he started telling us about how they kill the chickens and all that, and that wasn't really what I wanted to hear, but it was his car. He'd picked us up. He was, you know, helping us out. So that was him. And then there was another lady picked us up, and we were about an hour outside of my mum's house now by driving. So we'd made it quite far already, which was really, really surprising. We were about 2 hours in, and it had really, really shifted my perspective already. I was thinking, this many people, 3 people had picked us up. That was more lifts than I expected to get on the whole trip, really. And you know, I was thinking as well, you know, maybe is it still just a fluke? It's just a coincidence. 3 really, really friendly, crazy people just happened to be driving past on the same day. You know, it could have been. So we were cautiously hopeful about the next lift, but it came very quickly again. And then there was another one and another one. And by now we were on the motorway. We were stopping in the service stations. And this woman came up to us at the service station. She had a little clipboard, and she was asking us, it was a survey about why we'd picked to stop at that service station that day. And I just said to her, you're asking the wrong person. We were taken here by a hitchhiker, by a driver. We'd hitchhiked there. And she looked a little bit scared. She was like, oh, okay. And then walked and sort of backed off slowly, like she was scared of random hitchhikers. So that was funny. And that was it. And then, yeah, many more rides, dozens, really, over the whole trip. So another couple, we were around Manchester. And at that point, we learned a very important lesson that I would take with me all the way to Australia, which was don't leave the car at the entrance to a city. So we came into Manchester, one of the biggest UK cities, and the man said to us, do you want me to drop you at the service station? And we said, no, take us a little bit further. And so we did, and he was living on the outskirts, on the southernmost outskirts of Manchester. And the problem with that I'd find now and also in the future is everyone is only going to little local places along that road. They're not going around the city and back out again, because if they were, they wouldn't have come off the motorway. They'd be carrying on. And there weren't many entrances back to the motorway. So basically we had to walk about 15 kilometres. It's about a 3.5 hour walk in total. through Manchester, which was quite terrifying. You know, there was a lot of dodgy stuff going on. There were kids on bikes who had their hoods pulled up. I seem to remember them having balaclavas on, but I don't think they did. I think they just had their hoods all the way up and their hats on, and it was quite intimidating. Kids riding around and like big Land Rovers driving around, and it was just a very unsettling place. So we made a decision to jump on a bus just to get us past this area because we genuinely thought we were going to be mugged. So there was about a 20-minute bus ride we actually paid for on that trip. So it wasn't 100% hitchhiking that trip, but we had to. It was too unsafe, really. We had massive backpacks on. Who knows what would have happened, what people thought was in them. So now we were sort of on the outside of the city, on the other side now, away from the main central part. So we felt better. It was maybe another hour of walking in the morning, but we were just exhausted by this point. We'd come from Swindon. We didn't think we'd have made it this far at all. So we tried to find a little patch of trees, I suppose, a little woodland patch, somewhere concealed, somewhere green to put pegs in, so we could spend the night there. And it was very difficult to find that in a city. But we did. After a little bit of wandering around, we found a field, we found coverage by trees, and loads of other tents there. And we think it was a place where all the homeless people slept in that area, so we made as little noise as possible, put our tents up really, really slowly, just crawled in and hoped that they wouldn't come and interact with us, because we didn't know. They probably would have been fine, you know, but we were just scared, really. And it was really funny, as we were walking up to that spot, we saw these big green eyes in the distance, because we had these head torches on, and it looked like an alien. We wondered what we'd walked into, but it was a horse. Horses have big eyes at night, it turns out, when you're shining a torch on them, but they were these big green eyes just staring right at us. So that was quite a night, really. Quite a night. Anyway, next morning, woke up really early, about 5 o'clock. I was saying to Jack, we got to go. What if we get found? Thinking, because I remember reading about wild camping. I'd never really done it before at that point. Reading about wild camping, and it's saying, just be gone by the time anyone's there and you'll be fine. Reality is, you can leave whenever you want. You don't have to set up your tent and worry about being found, because just ask yourself, if you find a random tent in a field, what are you going to do? Really? You're just going to walk away. You're just going to hope that they haven't seen you, because you don't know what's in that tent. So on the big hitchhiking trip, what I learned was that. I learned that people would just ignore me. Occasionally, maybe 3 times out of the 600 nights, 3 times someone would come up to the tent, but they wouldn't open the tent. They'd always talk from the outside. There was one person that tapped on the tent really lightly, but no one ever opened the door, which is really interesting. Just a thin sheet of fabric was enough to separate you from them and to scare them a little bit of what's in there. So anyway, we didn't know this at the time. We just got up and left really early. Walked to the entrance to the motorway again, and we got picked up almost immediately. Had a little shower at the next service station, just using the disabled toilet sink, which is, it sounds a bit disgusting, but when you're hitchhiking, it's the best thing ever to find just running water. So, and that was it. And then I think by that point we'd found our final lift, which was it was a man who, he was the councillor for the Labour Party in his local area, which was cool. He was telling us about politics and about his career and where he started off, that kind of thing. So nice little chat. And at the end of the ride, he went, this is the thing, he went out of his way by about half an hour to take us to the Scottish border. He was living just south of it. Took us out of his way and then gave us £10 to go away with. And I remember thinking, he's done us a big favour and given us money, and we're never going to see him again. What is his motivation for that? Why is he doing that? Like, because at the time I thought no one does anything for someone unless they can see it coming back. And we walked away, and it took maybe a few weeks at least to work it out, but what had happened was he'd done that and he'd felt good about it, and that in itself was enough. Really, he knew he'd helped two people out to have a really, really good adventure to reach their finish line, and he'd seen us reach the finish line as well, so that was really good for him. And he'd given us a tenner, and he was probably just enjoying thinking what we're going to spend the money on, which was 2 beers at the pub at Gretna Green, or a cafe, I can't remember which, but they served beer. So it was enough for him just to know that he'd really given two people that experience. So I know that now as an older person, but yeah, and I do that whenever I can now. I do that to other people. I just help them because it's more rewarding than getting help back. And I know a lot of people, when I help them, they try and find ways to help me back as well. And it's really funny seeing it to people that haven't worked it out yet. It was a man the other day. I noticed his brake light wasn't working, one of his brake lights, and I helped it when he stopped. I went up to him and I'd helped him change it. He had a spare one, and I just had the screwdriver with me. I helped him get it off, and because I'd done it before, and I just did that. And he was like, "Oh, what can I do? Can I get you a cup of tea or something?" And I was like, "No, it's fine. Honestly, I don't want anything off you." And he was looking at me like, "What? Why? Why would you do that if you don't want anything in return?" But people don't always want something like that in return. Sometimes it's just enough to know they've helped people. And when I heard that before, realizing it for myself, I used to think, what a stupid thing to say. Like, you just want to do that. But no, it is the case. And so that's it. That was the first trip. And then the next one that will be in future podcasts, but the next one was, no, you know what, I'm going to leave it. I'm going to leave it for another time. But they get more and more epic, and then they lead into the big one. So thanks again for tuning in this week, and I'll see you next week.